dulcet tones. Well, I can sing next time. Hello, everybody. Welcome to week 9 of your free Salesforce training. I cannot quite believe that we're in week 9 already. That's just testament to the amount of time that's been spent in lockdown, for sure. Welcome again. And it's my pleasure to introduce Howard Stall, who is who is a consultant who works for a consulting firm, which the name escapes me, but I'm sure he will happily introduce himself in just a moment. Sorry, Howard, messed up completely there. Only human. But this week we have got a real treat for you. We're going to start teaching you some more advanced functionality in Salesforce, which will enable you to step up your process automation a notch or two. I think that this is probably the furthest that we will go in terms of the heavy stuff. I mean, just to recap, in these 9 weeks, you have covered building custom objects, custom fields, formulas, validations. You've done workflow rules. You've done process builder. You have done approval processes. So a lot of the key terms there. We have even looked at sharing and security, and we've had you complete a sharing and security project in order for you to apply that newfound knowledge. And let me just think, what else have we done? Lots of things. So this week we will be looking at advanced process automation, and then in the coming weeks we will start looking at data importing before I actually set you a project where I'm going to get you all to build out your own org and present it back to us on a recorded demo. I hope you will really enjoy doing that. Thank you to all of you again for continuing to join us week after week. We've got a lovely number in the class, around 15 a week, 15 per session that turn up. And it's my absolute pleasure to introduce you to Howard. I'm going to be quiet and let Howard introduce himself. Thank you for listening.
All right. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you, Howard.
All right. Hey, thank you, Gemma. So I am a Salesforce consultant, architect, whatever it takes these days. So I've been in the Salesforce world for a little over 13 years. So I've seen this grow from just code and Salesforce Classic with cases and Sales Cloud to, I don't know how many clouds there are anymore, and profiles, permissions, and features. So a lot of what you guys have been learning wasn't around a long time ago. So what I'm going to go over today is Flow. It first came out probably a decade ago, and it's evolved like a lot of Salesforce's products. And it's taking on a really cool life of its own. So I am by nature not a coder. And so I like to bend the boundaries of thinking outside the box. And so Flow was very appealing to me in the Salesforce world, because if I could avoid going to a developer who would tell me it would take 5 weeks to do something and I knew that it wouldn't, this is why I really hunkered down and started learning Flow. But before you go down the path with Flow, and I'm going to show you guys a demo of an app. So one of my big things is, and I haven't retired yet, I don't know if I ever will, I wanted to build an app, get it on the App Exchange, and really make all of the logic behind it with flows. So I was able to accomplish that last year, and actually did a couple of apps on the App Exchange just to check it off the list. It was always one of these things to do where we built for clients, we built for the companies we work for. Well, could we build for everybody else? So it was a cool challenge. So the demo here today that I'll show you guys is really kind of like the art of the possible. I'm not trying to advertise for money. It was just one of these. It's a great way to show you, I think, what you can do with flows in terms of thinking outside of the lines of what you really think is possible. So I'm going to go over that demo, and I'm going to kind of, at a high level explain, how do you even know what to do with Flow, or could you do it? How do you plan that? So when I was thinking about this app, my challenge was in Salesforce, as you guys know, you have an opportunity, you add products to it, and for the most part, a long time ago, that's where it stopped. Now you could layer in quotes and you could add products to that. Now, within the last 2.5 years, if you're lucky enough to enjoy having Salesforce CPQ, you can add more complex product configurations and it'll generate an order and automatically add, order lines to an order, right? So it used to be without CPQ, you had to figure that out. You had to figure out a way to create your own order and order lines. And then from there, if you guys have been learning objects and fields, then you now know you can get crazy. You could add about 800 different fields on an object. What I have seen, and even in one of my past slides, you have an order for services. Well, how do I track that order without adding tons and tons of fields to a record? And then you're going to confuse your validation rules, your workflows, like all of the things that fire. They're not going to know when not to and when to do it. And you have to start writing a ton of exclusions. So I wanted to figure out a way, well, how can I add like tasks to an order based on the product that someone's ordering or maybe the order type? And you could change that as a user at any time without writing code. And it was more or less empowering an admin or a typical user or owner of a company's Salesforce org to do what you want with your order and your order products to let people know, when to get things done. And I didn't want to do that with code. Now, I knew the Gantt charting type of capabilities, with Java, that's going to have to be custom. But, like building all those records and deciding if I want to skip weekends and create an actual real Salesforce task versus what I decided to do with a order milestone record, all of this stuff, you have to take a step back and what do you want to do? So I wanted to allow a user to define criteria when an order record would have children associated with it with a process builder. So basically, I want to add children records to a parent. And I want that to happen when I want to define that with a process builder. So again, I'm empowering a user or an admin to create that logic. But I want to build a process that regardless of if you have 1 or 5 or 6 or 7 different criteria, you can define those 7, but the action of taking records from an object and creating them underneath a parent, that's what the flow is going to do. And I want to automatically have that happen. I don't want the user to click another button. I don't want them to click this, that, the other thing. I hate clicking. I hate buttons. So if the opportunity is closed won and it meets some certain guidelines, then let's have a process builder that then fires off a flow that creates an order with order line items that copies that and then adds these tasks, add the tasks that are relevant. The other thing is, well, let's say that we've sold a certain product. Well, for that product, I want the task to say you have 5 days to review your contract or whatever. So, well, how do I let a user figure out the data values by different task type, by different products? So I've got to figure out, I know I can build an object and let them build a library of data points, but I got to populate that now. So I'm going to carry data from one to the other. Well, I want to now say if you reviewed the contract and you did that within 3 days, how do I kick off the next record so it can start its process? So I need something that can recalculate dates based on parent changes. So my point is, what you want to do is plot out what are the major things that you think you need to do with a solution as you consider using Flow. And so far, everything I've talked about, you can do with Flow. Now, there are some things, and I started to jot them down, and time taught me today, some major areas where Flow is not ideal. If you can't build that event to run with a process builder, you're going to have to look at possibly an Apex trigger to see if that would work. And if you're going to do that, that might be one of these points where you consider maybe the entire solution might need to be code and you need to call a developer. If it is going to be a very simple trigger, and it's really it. Like on delete, you want the flow to kick off and do something else. Then maybe you can have a mixed, Apex with flow. But the minute you start kind of exceeding the, we'll say process builder in this case to kick off a flow, that's where you really want to look at maybe Apex. The other thing is you have screen flows and you have auto launch flows. So auto launch flows you can trigger from a button, a process builder, Apex trigger. And and then you have screen flows. So as long as you don't have the screen in your flow, you can kick off an auto launch flow and it'll run in the background. Now on the screen, as you go to build flows, the one thing you'll notice with these screen elements are they're pretty simplistic still. You can't do multiple columns of data across a screen. It's much like you're taking a survey. So it's a very one, then based on that answer, I go to the next screen and the next screen. So it is pretty much like a flow chart for a business process. And the screen itself to capture the data is kind of a top down. There really isn't a left, right, all of this like you have with a regular record page. So think about that as well. If you really need to do a custom screen that's a little more fancy than what Flow has, again, there's an opportunity for you to kind of back out of Flow and look at doing a Lightning component or Visual Force with Apex behind it. So one of the other things, and I even encountered this with my app, is deleting records. So on my order record, I have these order milestones. Well, I didn't force them to be a master detail. So when you deleted the order, you could have these orphan records, which everyone hates. Well, in order to get around that, if I delete the parent, I want to force all the children to be deleted without making the lookup field a master detail or forcing the criteria. I could have had a flow and hit it behind a button, and it would have said delete the order and then all the children. Well, that's another flow to manage. And in my case, I wanted to put it on the App Exchange, and one less flow to activate when you download is better. So delete record actions, you'll start to enter into a fuzzy area with flows. And that's kind of where, these are some of the boundaries. I'll have some more of these for you guys on Wednesday. But this is just to kind of give you, an idea for planning. So now that I've bored you to death with a speech.
No, you didn't. What you've actually shown as well is the importance of the thinking that we architects have to do quite regularly. Is when we listen to requirements from customers, there are decisions that we have to make around, is flow an appropriate thing to do here? Plus, as a consultancy, we're probably in that org for all of about 5 minutes, compared to the users who will have to look after it going forward. So we have to be quite smart with our decisions. We have to understand the balance between what's easy for us to deliver now, but maybe is going to be harder to look after going forward. Like Howard said, it's yet another flow to look after, etc. So we have things to consider, like the skill sets of the people involved, how easy it is to make decisions within that company. Some companies take absolutely ages to make decisions and have lots of hoops and bureaucracy to jump through. So we've got a lot of factors that we have to weigh up when we design these solutions. So this slide is an excellent example of that.
So I'm going to give you guys now, aside from this Gantt chart that you're going to see on the screen here in a minute, all of the logic that you'll see in a second, it's flows behind the scenes. So I'm going to cheat. I'm going to clone a record. I'm going to hit save. And I'm going to add a product. Oh, you guys are seeing the slideshow. Is that what I saw?
Yeah. Howard, this group is wonderful at chatting in the chat because there's so many people. They're a little bit shy when it comes to talking and unmuting, but just keep one eye on the chat because it's quite active.
All right. I think you guys should be seeing the screen now.
Yep, perfect.
All right. So all I've done is I created an order record and I've added a product. So this is a natural Salesforce thing. We all know that out of the box. And now what's happened is behind the scenes, because I ordered a Essential Softwares bundle, it's gone out flow behind the scenes and said, wow, okay, you ordered that product. These are all the things that it's going to take to make this product whole. And so here I've created this object called order milestone. And what's happened is Flow recognized that I have an order and the product was this. And it's gone through over here in these two objects and said, wow, okay, what matches my product that you've ordered? And added those records to my order record. So I needed to add children based on criteria. Part of that criteria was another record that was added. And what's happened too is you notice all of these dates, they have a different dates have been set, 5/27, 5/28. If I click in here, there's actual text in here about what do I need to do when I activate this this customer setup or this activation in Azure Great Plains. So all of these fields, they've been populated. You've got 10 days to set this. This all came from Flow. And so what's happened is I have a process builder I'll show you guys in a second that goes out, it finds a match in this object called fulfillment template. It says, hey, I found this product. This product has these 9 records that need to be created when a new order record has been created inside of the environment. And it's been instructed to go through and read everything and then create records in another object. So all of that logic was done with a Flow, and there's 0 code. If I go back to my order record, even as I update some of these records, I have other flows that actually go through and will make this milestone and its children completed. So again, all the logic here, it gets Flow, no code. And as I allow the user to interact with a mixed set of, this Java library, right? So again, this is JavaScript. So here we have kind of a hybrid architecture. So as I click on this record and I want to set today's date, I want to change the owner, I want to mark it as completed, this is going to go through and it might update the child record down below, or well, not might, but it will. And at the same time, if it has any children, it's going to run through and update its children. Again, this is all done with Flow. So how did we do this?
Howard, would you mind just zooming in a couple of times for us, please? It shows up really small. Beautiful. Oh. Thank you.
Of that. So I have this process builder here on order product. Basically, the record has been created or edited. The order ID is populated. And so this is one of the interesting things you need to kind of take into consideration. So you have the order of operations in Salesforce, where especially something like this, where you have the order and then an order has order products. When Salesforce makes a commit to the database where it's going to create records, sometimes, the order product, for example, it can be created almost instantaneous ahead of, populating all the fields. And so at times you might miss, the criteria might get missed when you build a process builder. So, the thing here is I don't want this to miss the opportunity to kick off my flow. So I want to, hey, when the order ID is populated, that's my big criteria. And then what happens from here in my immediate actions, I want to go through and I just want to launch this flow, launch add milestone flow. I'm going to pass what's called a flow variable. So when the flow kicks off, it needs to know where to start. And in this case, I'm in a process builder. I'm on the order product or the order item, however you want to refer to it. So that record has an ID, and so does the order. And what I want to do is I want to pass this off to my flow. And that's super, super important because when my flow kicks off, it needs to know what record I'm talking about. So what is it supposed to do and where is it supposed to do it? So that was the process builder. Really simple. As you guys could see, you could add more criteria to it. And now what happens behind the scenes is 1, 2, 3, I've got 7 flows that manage this entire application. The first one we're going to look at here is going to be add order milestones to order. Now, this one, I'm going to zoom out a little bit. This is the entire flow end to end. This can be intimidating to some and to others, not so much. So there are a lot of routines that are running here. And I'm kind of going to go over some of these. And when I'm done, one of the things too we'll do is I'm going to point you guys to some cheats that you can actually download and show you how to actually start building flows right away without having to go through and look at screenshots and all of the other things that you see on the web. So the first thing I want to do is I know there's some information about my order that I'm going to want to use inside my flow. So I'm going to use this one little variable over here called get record. Now, flow is pretty much, same thing, label API name. There's no real convention other than your own convention. I try to follow one, but like all of us, at times we kind of get off base. So don't worry so much about your naming conventions, but try to make sure that as you're going through, I use get where I'm using a get or delete or update or create, because as you start to add things inside this flow, you're going to have to reference everything you've created here. And what happens is, as I go and look through my flow, after a while, you're going to start to see an inventory of all these little different variables. These are all make sense. I'm going to go through these, but as you can imagine, naming conventions upon what you're looking at, after a while, you get lost. So as you build these, I start with get order, for example. So on the order, the one thing too is you can build a flow that can look at an entire object. So this, flow can work in bulk. Depending on what you're doing, I wouldn't recommend it in some bulk operations. So what you want to do is try to limit the scope. So in my case, this ID equals order ID. And if you notice, this is the same parameter that we had in that process builder. And so what happens is the process builder has put the order ID into this variable. And now I can use that to query the order record. And what I've done is I wanted to get the activated date, all the date fields, activated, created, effective, end, owner ID, PO date, because these are going to come into play later on in my flow. So I want to get them right now so I can play with them. And what happens is this flow was created before some of the updates. And I'm still kind of old school where I like to create my own variables. So if I need something, I will create a variable for it. And what I mean by that is I can do a get record.
So you're actually running a query now in this instance, aren't you? You're saying I want you to return a record based on certain criteria, and store the ID of that record into almost like an open bucket, an open empty bucket that you can then draw from later on, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm old school too. I like to make my variables as and when as well.
And so the thing that it'll do, so it'll say you're only going to look at storing one record. So hopefully, your ID only matches one time. It doesn't necessarily have to be a record. Missed the chat.
Yeah, Jeremy says, is this part of the flow basically selecting values and populating them into an array to be used in the next step?
Pretty much, yes. So flow doesn't know anything. And so if you wanted to do something, you have to go and fetch something like values, store them, and then take an action on them, again and again and again. So the flows kind of become the data elements inside of what it needs to operate. So either you can do updates, deletes, all kinds of stuff. I can actually go through and say, instead of an ID, I can say the activated date is greater than today, and it's going to pull up everything, all orders where the activated date would be less than. So again, that query, it's records or record. So what you'd want to do is you want to be specific as possible, because they will run and it'll find them all. So we're going to go back to order ID equals order ID. Naturally, it's going to do only the first record. So Salesforce now, you can automatically store all your fields. And what this does is it'll create this order ID record variable, and it'll list out all your fields for you, and you can reference them later on. You can also do what I've done, where I want to choose the fields and variables that I want, and I want to put them into separate elements. So activated date, order date, so on and so forth. And that's what I did previously. Or what I can do is say, hey, I'm going to select the fields, but I want you to keep them in a bucket for me. And I at least just want to name the bucket. So as you get started with this, my suggestion would be to, as you get going, account ID, where are you going to put it? You can go here and resource. So, for the most part, your pick list values, your ID fields, a lot of things that you're going to create with these resources, they're 9 out of 10 times, they're going to be a variable. And I'm going to say order account ID. Your data type is going to be text. No custom fields. No, you won't, because there's not custom fields. These are specific, these are variables that are going to solely live in this flow. And here, like you notice in the flow where I could pass the order ID, the only reason I could pass that order ID is because I said that order ID variable in that flow was available outside of flow. And so now it is available for input, meaning I could actually pass the account ID from Process Builder to this flow by now going back to the Process Builder and saying order account ID and selecting it for input.
Yeah. So that means that when you change that order, the Process Builder will run and will inject the order ID into your Process Builder, and it will also, because your Process Builder is collecting that, but also it will inject into the empty bucket, the variable, the order account ID from your Process Builder. It will actually copy and paste it into that bucket so that then the flow can pick it up and do magical things with it.
Yes. And then you could also make this available to go outside of flow to another flow. And I'll show you guys that too. So these are variables, to your question, Kat, they live inside this flow only. So if you were to make another flow, you're going to have to do an order ID, an order account ID, like all of those same variables that you used in your first flow, you'd recreate them again in your second flow. So they only live inside of this one little flow. So that's how you would create a variable. And you could go through here and almost like you're building a report. I want to store this field, but now I've got to create a home. I've got to create that variable for every single field you want. And yes, you are kind of building copies of what exists, so that way you can manipulate it later on. And so now I have the order. I queried it. I have all my details about the order. And now what I want to do is I have the concept of letting the user tell me the record type that they want without using the record type IDs. Some of the things you don't ever want to do are hard code process builders or flows with record IDs, because as things change, and they will break if you start using record IDs. So in Salesforce, record types, if you guys have created some in the past couple of weeks, they're actually, although you go to your account, your opportunity, or your custom object, and you create these record types and you see them there, in reality, they live in their own object. And what you can do is say, hey, I want to go and find, I actually have a record type called generic, where the developer name is generic. It's an active record type. And the object is that order milestone object that we saw related to the order record. And what I want to do is I want to get that ID of that record type. Because again, in my world, this is an app that's on the App Exchange. And so the ID field is going to change again and again and again as people download this. So I had to build in a way to go and get the record ID, for that person's org. So again, this is one of these cool little things you can do, because with Flow, all of these objects that you see with the data loader, they're all exposed. And they're behind the scenes. And you can actually see more objects here in Flow than you can Process Builder. So the cool thing is you can put in these object names and Google it, and 9.9 out of 10 times you're going to be sent to the developer side of Salesforce, and it'll give you all the explanations of what it is, as well as kind of like a mini object diagram of how it fits into the world of Salesforce. So I've gone out here, I've done another get record. Now I need to get that order product record. So Process Builder kicked off on that order product, order ID was added, and the same thing here. The ID, I've got another unique field in there that I'm using as criteria. But for the most part, again, I'm collecting values and then I'm storing them. Now, here's what I did. So now, you guys saw there were this order template that I had over here, fulfillment template, if you will. And I needed to find out, okay, well, how do I go look for this one? Well, I knew the product from over here because I had the product ID. And when I looked up that product ID, lo and behold, it had it had a product 2 at the end of the day. So what I decided to do was, all right, from that information, now I got to go find a match in that object. So now I'm going to go out and find this order fulfillment template ID, and I find my match. And again, I'm going to store these values. So as you can see right now, it's pretty simple. So I'm running out and fetching, I'm going through, and I am caching variables at this time. So with Flow, I had multiple products on my order or my opportunity. I have multiple child records to this parent. So what happens now is I have to run through what's known as a loop element. And a loop allows you, on my call waiting. As Jeremy, to your question, it creates 3. So I actually have 1, 2, 3, 4 right now, different get records, 5. I mean, there are multiple in here. So each one of those kind of lives independently on its own. Now the thing here with loops is I need to loop through a set of child records. So much like in code, where you have a set of records, a loop is going to allow me to go through and say, hey, I know that you just queried. Let me back up a minute. I got that template. So now I know that there's a template that runs for this product, and it has these 9 tasks that need to get created. So I got the template over here, and then I decided, well, how do I now have to go get those 9 things that were related to these children records? So I got all of those. So I decided to build another get records. That template matched the template ID, or on the child, the template ID matches for the children. And I'm going to store all of these fields down here as well. Create task, if weekend, default queue. So all of these will, again, tidbits of information per record. I'm going to keep them. Now I'm going to do something with them. So with a loop, I can create this collection, and I'm going to run through it one at a time. And there's some, again, flow templates I'll show you guys. So I'm just kind of doing a high level overview right now So this loop is going to take all of those records, the 9 of them, and run through one at a time. And the reason we're running through one at a time is because the values on each one of those records, if you remember, some of them were skipping weekends, some of them had a 5-day start date, like they had different values. So what I want to do now coming out of this loop is I'm going to follow this path. For each item, I'm going to start to assign my variables of my order milestone, which is what I want to create, against the values from what I just queried. And so now it's a very simple, the related order record when I create that order milestone needs to be what? The flow doesn't know. Well, it's going to be your order ID. Well, what about the fulfillment step number? Well, that comes from the ID of one of the other ones we queried. So as you can see, all the stuff we queried, it starts to actually get populated into target fields. And now I've got this assignment allows me to transfer the data from one variable to another. So the group name that I queried from a previous get record or get records has now become the value in this target milestone group field, custom field. So assignments allow you to manipulate the values inside of your flows. Now, I've assigned that. I still need to go and get even more information. So I need to go get some fulfillment steps. So there are children related to some of these. And what's happened is behind the scenes, I don't know if I have any on here or not. No. So one of these could actually have steps that say step 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 before you can complete this. So you have an order with a child with grandchildren. So this flow actually goes down another layer and it looks for grandchildren that need to be added, underneath everything. And what it does the same thing. Go get the records, gets the values, and then what happens if I don't have a record ID? So I'm going to have a decision element where some of this information may or may not be populated. So this is another key element here. So sometimes in our flows, we need to be very, very careful of what gets populated and what doesn't. So you'll start to have errors in the flow where the value was null. And just like where you were to create a record in Salesforce in the UI, if certain fields are blank, you get an error. The same thing with flow. So you have to be very careful here, especially as it comes to record IDs. So in this case, what I wanted to do was the user didn't specify a record type they had created in their environment. So because I didn't do that, one was never passed down in those previous get records. And if you remember, as a failsafe, I went and queried the generic record type ID a couple of steps back. And so what's happened now is, hey, that record type was null. The admin of this environment never set it up. And so, hey, the record type is now going to equal the generic one. If it had been populated, there's another path. The record type was not null. And what happens is they both go to the same place. So now one of the other things is when I want to create one of these records is I gave them a choice over here. Whenever you create this record for create projects and Expensify, I want to assign that record to the running user. Or I actually want to, I'll show you, I want to assign it to another user, meaning not who's ever involved in the process, a queue, or the order owner. Then I have 4 choices that this record could be populated with. So now Flow has to know what to do when a user picks one of these 4 pick list values, which now means, as you guys guessed it, I have to do some gets and I have to figure out who the current running user is or who the assigned queue is, so on and so forth. So now the target user to be populated, I'm using these assignments. So the owner ID, which is where we're heading when we create that record, well, we said current user. If this was populated, my decision element here is going to be, hey, did that field that you guys just saw assigned from, did it equal running user, or owner ID? So this is that custom field with pick list values, simple decision. And last but not least, well, it didn't equal one of these, so the default is going to be Q. So decisions allow you to give the flow the ability to do different things based on values in a record or what variables do. You could do a lot with decisions that can tell it what to do as you're creating something, deleting, editing. So decisions are really, it's a kind of a if-then type statement, except you can do multiple here. So in this case, my whole goal with all of this right here, with one decision and 4 assignments, was to populate the value of a single field. And if you've looked at code, it's a very similar process of go get me what you think you want me to do, which is populated with a running user. Okay, great. Well, what is the running user? I need an ID. Or if it's a queue, I need an ID. So if I start matching these outcomes in a decision, I now need to know, like, what's the data point, right? So now I've determined one field. And now you're thinking, Jesus, what if I have 50 fields to populate? Yeah, well, you could be here a long day if each one of them, or a long while if each one of these, has a dynamic population like this. So we finally made it around. And now, one of the other things is, what happens if I want to do my start time as a field on order or a field on product? So again, I gave the user a choice of which date field. And if you remember, we got all those dates from the order. We got a lot of dates from the product on those get elements. And what we're trying to do now is figure out what do I put as a start date on one of those records? Well, I asked them that over here is, So this is a library of steps that you can use over and over again, or an object basically, and this is what I want to call what we're creating. So these fields all map to the other one called order milestone. And over here, what I wanted to do was actually ask them, what's my target time to complete? 8 days. Well, 8 days from what? So field for start date. Well, it's going to be, in this case, a field on product. Well, okay, which field? You could even define a custom. So again, much like I asked you which user the owner should be, it's the same thing here. If it's going to be a field on the product or a field on the order, I am now giving them all of these choices. Well, if I give you a choice, I got to figure out a path. And so now I've got a decision element over here. And it was field on the order. And now what? Great. Which order? Which field? So now, as you guys can, understand, this actually now goes to, field on order or product. On this decision element, it's going to ask me, okay, which field? Activated, created, PO, so on and so forth. And what happens is, based on that outcome, if it's field on the start date, I come over here, I assign that date field a value. And this is, for every type of potential outcome, you've got to have a way to populate that variable. And then when I'm done, well, now I asked you if you wanted to start this task on Sunday or Saturday or skip it. Well, you said skip it. Okay, well, great. Now what do I do? I don't want to start on Sunday, so I need to figure out if it's starting on Sunday. So I've done that. Now I need to add some values to it, and so on and so forth. So you guys kind of understand where I'm going now. Like every little thing you want to create, if you're not going to blindly copy a value from one record to another, in this case, you need to have all of these different assignments and these decision points of what to do with this information. And then finally, as we've gone through everything, we figured out how to populate some of these field values. I'm adding, days to my end date so it doesn't end on a Sunday. I create my first record. I create my first order milestone record from all of these variables that we've assigned. And then I go back through and I do it again. And in this case, the flow did it 9 times. And when you look at this, and when you first start getting into this, you're like, wow, okay, this user's going to sit here for an hour and wait. You guys saw a minute ago, it's pretty instantaneous. Depending on how you want to run through your flows, this can be pretty quick. And what happens with this is it runs through, creates those 9 records. It goes through and it updates, saying, hey, at the order product level, I'm going to update the template ID, the number, the unique ID. So I want to actually put some information to backtrack. Why did I create this child record of order product to begin with? And so that's what I'm doing here. So I've ran through all of that. And now I've done everything known to man. I've created my 9 records, and I'm still not done. Now what I can do is I can say, hey, there's a subflow of adding dependents. And this is another flow that basically runs through and says, hey, for this task, were there other steps that I need to do before that? Basically adding grandchildren. And so what I can do, these input and these output variables, this is where they come into play. So I want to pass the order ID down to the next flow because I already have it. And I can come in here and assign all kinds of stuff to pass this down to another flow. It'll run through its iteration, and it's going to come back. When it comes back, it's going to go to the next flow. And it's going to look for dependents, and it's going to look for steps of dependence. So here, kind of where I'm going is you can sit here and you can launch one flow from Process Builder, and what's happening in this case is there are 3 flows that are running. The first one, the second one, and the third one. And then finally, you're done. Now, this took a lot of headache, a lot of crying, a lot of sleepless, long nights, and I've probably invented several cuss words along the way that aren't native to any of our languages on the phone. So it can be a very, very time-consuming process. So one of the things that will help you through is the cool thing that Flow has is debug mode. So unlike Process Builder, I know that I need the order ID and the order product ID. So I built it. I think I'm ready to go, but I'm not sure. Well, we can run a debug. And I have an order record. I've created it manually. I don't have anything turned on, because I'm still designing my processes and my flows. I'm going to take this order ID. And I'm going to put that there. And I know I have an order product. And I need that ID. And I'm going to click Run. And if I'm good, I get to all done. And this, after you've designed some flows that are pretty lengthy in nature, this is like time to get a drink flow. So, or the message for when they get it all done, because this means that it's run through everything. You don't have any errors. It doesn't mean that, necessarily you were successful. You could have drawn blanks across the board and nothing happened. Or you can actually run through. Exactly, the cigar moment. So the other cool thing is, number one, it's going to run through all these elements on the side. And it's going to show you all the record IDs, everything we just talked about. You could spend a while going in here and making sure, okay, I did this, it got that, it populated, it did, So the cool thing about flows, unlike Process Builder, is you can debug these and you can follow the path and go, okay, well, why, when I get to this decision element, why is it going left instead of right? Well, you can come here and say, hey, it's null is true. Well, why is that field still null? And figure out why that record type ID variable isn't getting populated somewhere up top. So this is an amazing feature of flows. Now, debug mode comes with this moment of clarity when you realize that it will create records, it will edit, it will delete. it will do everything you asked it to do, even in debug mode. So if you're building in production, which no one ever does, I know, be very careful that what you're doing here will actually modify stuff in prod. So as you get used to these things, sandboxes are awesome for that. But I just want to make sure, because it's one of these where a lot of people think, oh, debug's cool. I can run through and, track it down. No, it's actually now gone through and created some entities, or, it's done what it needs to do inside this environment. So I'm going to pause there.
Sandbox first.
What's that?
So please make sure you test this in a sandbox first.
Yes. Because so flows you can manipulate in production. I won't lie to you. You can actually go through here and run them, edit them, and do all these cool things in prod. You don't have to worry about code coverage. You don't have to worry about promoting it from a sandbox to production. So you can actually do what you need to do in production, which as you get more confident and comfortable with these, that's why it's awesome, because all of a sudden something's changed in your org or whatever, and you can quickly get in there and turn it off or make a modification. So as you're building these flows, some of the new things that have come out have been, I want to run this in system context mode, or I want to run it as a user defined. The key difference here is that if you don't have permission to go and look at all of the fields on the order line item, well, we know what's going to happen. Let's say 3 of those items on an object are needed in your flow. If you're running it at a user level, they're not going to get those variables won't get populated. And if you needed them, your flow is going to fail, or things are not going to get populated. System context, it's regardless of what's set up at the object and field level, it's going to do what it needs to do. And it's, all of that almost just like code. So this is a key difference here between flows as user versus system. And, so as you build these, just think about that, because the other thing in the background is you need to worry about having, you can actually run flows by assigning those to a profile or a user, much like permission sets now. But the bigger one here is, as you're building them as a system admin, things work beautiful. And then as you roll them out, they fail. So first, start by checking your system context. And then as you go into some of these other elements, then you can start getting into object and fields and things of that nature. But this is a great first starting point. Now, the other cool thing that I will now let you guys know is there is this concept of what are called flow templates. If you guys have been exposed to them or not, these came out roughly last May, so a year ago, and they were announced at, I believe it was Trailhead DX. And basically what these are I'm tired of looking at screenshots, and I'm tired of listening to long audio sessions like this and screen demos. I just want something, what if I had a flow template, a template of how to create a child record or how to clone or so on and so forth. Those are out there now in the App Exchange. So, I got tapped last year by the product guys to throw an app out there. And I did. So it was really cool, because in the past, what happens, and you guys have seen, if you've downloaded some things off the App Exchange, if it says managed, you cannot see inside of it. Well, now if you have flows and you're on the App Exchange and I mark them as a template, you can take these and do a save as and make them your own. So one of the things to do after this call is you can go out on the App Exchange and you can search for flow templates. They're in the Flow store. Or the other cool thing is, as I go to create a new flow, I can actually go and get templates. It's just going to really send you to the App Exchange. But it'll give you kind of a predefined set. And these are all of the ones that are out there that now several of us on the App Exchange have tried to create so that we can give you guys like real world examples to work from. And right now I think I've got about 9 or 10 of these flow templates inside of an environment. And as we back into something smaller, what it looks like, if you guys cannot see my screen, let me know.
You can.
So these are some of the, okay, cool. So these are some of the, these are simpler flows. So opportunity to order. So if you didn't have CPQ in your environment, you'd have to build code, or you'd have to do, potentially Process Builder may or may not work depending on what you're doing. Or this is one of the flow templates. So what would happen is you would get this, you'd download it, and it would have all of this here for you. All you need to do is do a save as, new flow, give it your own name, and then boom, you're actually ready to rock and roll. And this is a great example of, I'm going to get opportunity information, I'm going to get account information, I'm going to assign them to order values. So this is kind of the old school way of, order and account, so on and so forth. So these are, basic flows. They look intimidating, but it shows you how to go and catch variables, create a record. After you create your record, I can go get opportunity products. I can loop through that. So all of these are wonderful working examples. All of these are free so far from all of us who have put them out there. And they're amazing ways to at least get you going so that you can actually go through and explore flows in a more meaningful way. So I'm going to stop there for a moment and switch to a different org. Any questions? I know everybody's.
Are people generally feeling like they understand this so far? I mean, yes, it is a lot to take in. It's a lot to take in for those of us who have been doing it a few years as well. So don't worry about it. But if you do have a question, please feel free to come off mute. Jamie. Yes, it's a lot to take in. Okay, Jeremy, you have the floor. Okay, so Jeremy says, when you assign the variables in get records, there was a part where you define the data type. Doesn't the item you're selecting already have a data type, and wouldn't that be passed forward? I have a similar one that's related to that question around previously when I was using Flow, I would pass the record ID into a text variable. And then most recently, I had some issues with it, and it told me to pass it in as a record. And then I got confused because I was like, well, I'm only working with one record at the moment. Why would I need to assign it to a collection?
Yeah.
Maybe I'll give you both those questions to unpack.
No, and this is a, here's a cool use case, and let me make sure that we don't get thrown out. Yes, so when you go to get records and you define the data type on the variable, 9 out of 10 times you could just create one. So you have date, time, date, tick list, Boolean, currency, number, and text. So text is, for the most part, going to be your record IDs, of course, your text fields, things of that nature. Pick list values. So here, this is, you can say pick list and retain a value here, or these are also resources that you can use inside of screen flows. So, what happens in Flow is it likes to use the primitive data types that we're used to seeing, like when you go to Apex with numeric or string, or it's date, time. Those are primarily the ones you're going to be dealing with. So there is a use case that I had recently where on close one of an opportunity, if the owner's role matched a certain role and they were in a business doing it, like all of this, like 6 or 7 weird criteria. They wanted to create a reminder task. They wanted to create a task and they wanted it to be, 2 days less than, they had this installation date on their opportunity record. So set it up for, the due date, -2, reminder at 8 a.m. in the morning. And, let it go out there, and hang out there as a pending task. But at the same time, if the owner changed or the opportunity was closed, lost, or this installation date had changed on the opportunity, I need to change that task that's already out there, or I need to go and delete it because we've closed, lost. So what this looks like is I did a process builder that on opportunity closed one and allowed them to define these 6 or 7 weird criteria. We said, hey, your first evaluation on your process builder is going to be basically creating the reminder task as new. So again, that process builder, it sent me down the opportunity ID, and I had to get this appointment date, the owner ID from the opportunity. And then what I did was I decided to store this reminder task ID on the opportunity. So that way I can refer to it later. I could have queried task and got an ID if the opportunity and match the opportunity ID, but it was only going to be 1 reminder per opportunity. So this was kind of an easy way to do it. So I've gone out, I've got my opportunity information again, but in that process builder, I had a couple of different things going on where what I did was if it was a new task in process builder, there were these 7 criteria, but if I said the ID of the task on the opportunity was null, plus it met those 7, then tell my flow I need a new task. And I just created this task event type variable. And in my decision, I said, hey, if process builder sends you new, go down a path. If it sends you change, go down a path or delete. So I let the process builder do some of the heavy lifting in terms of determining what it wanted flow to do. And so now what's gone through is it said new. All right, cool. Well, what came up is, hey, the task due date, if it's closed 1 today, we don't want a task that was due less than 2 days than today because that's in the past. So now I had to figure out, okay, great. If it's less than the current date, that's a yes. Now what do I do? I'm going to go through and just do today at 2, and then basically I can subtract 2 and kind of keep the same flow. But again, some of these things you can still do inside of flow as logic. So if you have things where all these different scenarios can happen, again, like you saw in the larger one, you can program these things, you can program it in here. And in this case, I wanted to keep this job schedule date variable the same across the board. So I just wanted to add 2 days to it. Because when I create my task, the task due date, the reminder set, owner ID, all of that standard task type stuff, it's now being set by those same variables inside my flow. So that's my new one. Well, that task was created. It updated the opportunity with the task ID, and everybody's happy. The sales owner or the opportunity owner now has this task for this appointment date related to the opportunity in the future. So on Process Builder, the other thing I did was what happens if the appointment date or the owner changes? So in my Process Builder, I just said is changed on those 2 fields and said, hey, if either one of these are true, here's what I need you to do. I need you to call up Flow, give it the opportunity, tell it to change. And then what's going to happen is I'm going to update the activity date, the owner ID, and the reminder date because technically all of those could change. So why not just update it? And, inside that process builder, there was another criteria. If it's closed, lost, go find that task and get rid of it. Very simple delete. When I looked up my opportunity, this RTR task ID remember, I picked it up over here. And so now if Process Builder told Flow to delete it, it's going to run through and go through that decision to delete. So you can see, the workflow rules, you could do formulas to evaluate if something was true. These decision elements, in some cases, you can think of it like that, a complex formula, if you will, where you don't have to write a ton of these statements. You could say, hey, does this match this? Nope. What about this? What about this? What about this? And you do like 8 or 9 different decisions here and have different paths inside of a single flow. So this is kind of another really simple design of just creating a reminder task, but now not letting it hang out in the org for too long because they should be deleted or the owner should be changed because the opportunity, it's changed hands. So here's another cool example of, things that you can do with Flow, by, a combination of Process Builder doing some of that criteria and that heavy lifting. Question? This is a lot to absorb.
Samira says, it's not a question, but rather a thought, which may be incorrect based on my newbie experience. It is odd to me to have to work through variables when almost everything else we've seen in Salesforce can be connected to an automation process directly via APIs. Wrapping my head around it has taken some time to digest.
Yes. That's very, that is true. But if you start to dive into code later on in some of your orgs, or you go and look at some stuff other developers have done, you'll notice a very similar pattern with Flow and variables. So Apex also requires these variables to go out and fetch stuff. So it's a very, very similar pattern because it's utilizing the underlying framework of Salesforce, but in a different way versus the API layer, which is pretty much the metadata at the S object and field level. Flows, we're calling it from another side of Salesforce. So variables are key here.
Mm-hmm.
What other questions do you guys have for today? I feel like we're running through this really hard.
I think what's going to be helpful as well is when everybody gets an opportunity to build it and to play with it.
Yes, so objects that have validation rules, all of that you will run into. So Flow does not bypass the validation checks that you have in place. You'll get errors. And the cool thing is, you will actually get, and I'll pull up one. You'll get spammed, even as you're testing.
Okay, so you can see here from this list that you've got several flows that will daisy chain together to form an overall solution. What are the advantages of doing it that way?
All right, so first, error emails. So this is what happened. So you can see the name of the flow on this one. And this is from one of my client orgs, and I don't know what they've done. I think this one was an inactive user because they hard-coded an ID over time. But the cool thing is that when something fails, you will get the error message in email, so you don't have to be there and ask somebody on the screen, like, what did it say? You'll get a pretty extensive error message that has everything that you're used to seeing. So the thing about running and doing different flows like we saw earlier, let's see, add milestones to order. What happens is, what I love to do is, what I want to do is have a routine that creates those records like I showed you, the order milestones, and then be done with it. If there are other things that need to happen to related children or other objects that are related to this, then what I like to do is create a subflow. And mainly because now if I decide I don't want that action to happen anymore, or there's a change in the architecture or whatever happens, I can cut that line and it no longer goes to that. It performs that subroutine because, there's been a change. So this now allows me to actually create different flows, and I can work on them independently at the end of the day and not risk somebody coming in and saying, hey, can you add, this to the flow? And, when it gets to that, when you dependence type of your flow, all you add some fields and variables there. Well, you picked the wrong variables, you picked the wrong targets. There's a multitude of things to do. So what I like to do is separate these out into different types of flows and connect them together so that, the flow can run through its process for a given object and area at a time. Rather than this giant atomic flow that could take a while to run, or when it comes to troubleshooting, that's where your other headache's going to come into. So the larger the flow, the bigger the headache's going to be over time.
That makes sense. Thank you. Any other questions? No? Okay.
I just lost video.
Pardon?
I think I just lost.
You just lost video?
Yeah.
Oh, you're back.
All right. So what I wanted to do today was kind of give you guys this huge overview of flows, and, allow you to see the art of the possible, kind of get you thinking, make sure that you're aware of, these flow templates that are out there. And I think the next session, Gemma, that you had scheduled was Wednesday, where we can go over, like, how do you launch your flow from a button? What happens when you go to finish a flow? So what are some of the routines around that? So we can definitely get into that, I think, in the next session, because this can be a lot to digest. But I do urge you guys, if you want to get into flows, please, dig deep into some of these templates. And on top of that, I'm trying to find the document.
Could you recommend any trailhead badges that that we could be doing in between sessions, Howard?
I can. So I will come up with a recommended trailhead mix for you guys. No worries there. And the cool thing is, like, I'm showing you on the screen. So some of the stuff, like I talked to you guys about with these templates, this is a 40-page document that explains all of kind of a lot about what we've talked about today. And I can email this out to you guys so you don't have to download it off the App Exchange or whatever. But this has got some awesome information in it. It kind of breaks down these flows in a little more granularity for you. So you can see, cloning and opportunity. So there's a flow for that. And I've got tons of information here that, you could spend hours and hours just taking one of these and manipulating. So, in addition to these flow templates that are out there, a lot of us in the ecosystem, we've spent hours and hours doing documentation and screenshots for you guys, because we've been where you're at, and we know how challenging it can be to learn something like this and frustrating. So we're here to help you at the end of the day, because this, it makes all of us stronger. And there is a point in time where, as you're learning flows, you need to be on suicide watch as you get used to this. So
it's not that.
So it's kind of nerdy, it's kind of geeky, but it's cool. And as you learn this, you don't have to go to dev anymore. You don't have to sit there and wait for somebody to get back to you. You think, hey, here's what I've done. And then people are to go, okay, that's cool. So there's some huge advantages, because now you can start to be self-sustaining. And as you guys saw, like I wanted to experiment with building something on the app exchange, but I didn't want to write code. And so there's a ton that's possible.
Okay, everybody. So I think if you have any more questions, Howard, is there anything else you wanted to go through for this session?
No, I'm good.
Okay, everybody. So we'll close a little bit early tonight. Give you an opportunity to digest. Howard will give us a list of Trailhead badges that we can do for homework, and look forward to seeing you on Wednesday. Thank you,
Awesome.
everybody, for coming.
Thank you, guys.
Yes, thank you, Howard. Thanks for giving up some of your time for us. Much appreciated.
No worries. All right, bye-bye.
Let me try and...